Good evening. They tell me I'm live. This is a whole new system tonight that we're doing. And I'm sorry to be late. Actually, the other woman you see on the screen with me is Missy Singer Dumars. Missy, say hi.
Hi,
Say
and I'm
hi.
just
Good.
checking our Facebook to make sure you can see us.
Yep. Peggy's with us, I'm sure. I see one person live. So I'm sorry we're late, but actually, Missy and I got to gabbing. It's just that simple. So we've got a lot to do tonight, and we don't want to keep you too long. So we're going to start right away. I'm Christina Apt. Welcome to this version of the Crown Hill Journey. Tonight, we are going to share where the house is now, today. We're going to share the story behind the story of the writing of the book. Candi Donaldson Thornton, who is a spiritual medium who worked with me on the book, will be joining us. And when Candi comes, she will share her part. And if you don't know about me, I am a author, a journalist, an op-ed columnist, a radio commentator, and a media consultant. And I've been writing for 40 years, maybe more. And I've been a storyteller all my life. So I am happy, thrilled to do this tonight. And I welcome all of you. But I want to introduce you to Missy Singer Dumars, who is the lady of the manor now.
Thank you so much. And so welcome to the manor. You are sitting in the living room with me of Crown Hill. I'm Missy Singer Dumars, and I am, as Christina said, the lady of the manor and of the farm here, and head farmer and owner of Crown Hill and all the rest. About
Missy, tell us
myself.
about the farm, because when I lived at Crown Hill, it was not a farm. It was a horse farm. I had horses, but I did not actively farm it. It was all I could do to get the house in order and then live there.
Yes.
But you have turned it back into what it was and what it was meant to be as a farm.
Yes,
So
this is
tell
a
us about
beautiful spot. I want to say it's a beautiful spot up on a hill with a view of Lake Erie on the background, surrounded by hardwood forest and vineyard and hay fields. It's a beautiful open space with wonderful, wonderful neighbors who, some of which may be watching. Hi. And we have 13 acres here, and I'm turning it back into a working farm. I grow heirloom vegetables. There's an old orchard that I'm working on getting back to healthy production again as well with apples. And I just discovered this year a plum tree and pear tree. And I also raise chickens, ducks, and geese, all for their eggs. And we're a soy-free farm. I try to be as regenerative and sustainable in my practices. I don't have any large machinery. I do everything by hand. So it's really about deep, intimate connection with the land and with the food that I grow and the food that we eat. And I also teach a lot about gardening, what I do here, cooking, what to do with the food.
how do you teach that? Where do you teach that if people
Oh,
want to
I
learn
teach
from
that
you?
all over. My Instagram feed is the most popular spot. That's where, just through my day, if you want to follow days in the life of Crown Hill Farm and follow along every day, I always post in Instagram stories, and it's Crown Hill Farm NY, New York.
All right. So everybody, sorry for that. Facebook took us off. I don't know why, but we are back and we are going to move on with our presentation. So this is an 1880 picture. I'm trying to see it and do it of Crown Hill. At the time, it was owned by Luther Landon. But this is just around the time that Mary and Owen Southwick became the owners of the farm. I came to the farm first in 1979. I will make this background quick because some of you may have heard it. In 1979, my first husband and I were coming back to the Western New York area from Vancouver, and he wanted to have horses, so we needed a farm. And we looked and looked and looked, and one of the farms we looked at was this farm in Eden. At the time, it was owned by the Crow family, Mary and Clem Crow. He had been played at Notre Dame for Newt Rockne. He'd been a coach of the Bills and the Baltimore Colts and won Grey Cups in Canada. She was Irish, and they had 10 children. And the house was full of their life and love when we saw it in 1979. But unfortunately, at the time, we did not have the opportunity to buy it. We just didn't get it done. But the house always remained with me in my thoughts because there were two things about it. One was the wraparound porch where you could see Lake Erie, and the other was that Clem Crow had created a basketball court on the second floor of the barn because he had 10 kids and he was going to keep them active and busy. So the house stayed with me. I just loved it. And something about it called to me. And for the next 16 years, I became a house stalker. I would drive by it. If no one was around, I would sit outside and look at it. And the people who bought it, who instead of us went in 1979, were a commune led by Dan Winter. If his name sounds familiar, his mother was Thelma Winter, who was a local artist many of you may know. His family also owned S&S Electric, but Dan marched to the beat of his own drummer, and he started a commune at Crown Hill and called it Crown Hill. It was an organic and crystal farm, and he published nationally on all kinds of topics. 16 years later, my husband and I are divorcing, and I was getting horses in the divorce settlement, and I needed a place to keep them. Crown Hill was back on the market. I came to the farm in 1995 on my own. I moved in with a bed and a dresser and nothing else. But I knew that there was something about this house that called me, and I didn't want to die not knowing life at Crown Hill. So I started, and over the next couple of years, I got furniture and got settled and got a job and started to make a life at Crown Hill. And then one Saturday, I went out to my mailbox and there was a letter, no return address, no postmark. And I almost threw it out, but I thought, oh, at least make sure that it's not some $1 million check, right? So I opened it up, and inside was this. And this is exactly what it looked like. No note, no handwritten note, no signature, but in the center was a highlighted paragraph. As I was to find out later, this page was copied from this book, which is The History of Eden, Volume 1. And in that history, on this page, I'm going to read you briefly what it says. In 1866, there were only about 13 homes on Sandrock Road, which is the road where Crown Hill is located. One of them, now owned by Clem Crow, has a gruesome story. In the 1880s, Owen Southwick lived there. An item in the 1884 Erie County Independent newspaper told how Mrs. Southwick had committed suicide by hanging herself in the woodshed. She had left letters saying she was tired of life. However, neighbors thought she had been murdered because she borrowed yeast starter the day before and had mentioned planning to do her wash. They thought a housewife planning those routine tasks would not also be planning suicide. Apparently, the evidence was not convincing to the authorities because no arrests were made. But for years, the youngsters in the neighborhood skirted the place with shivers and horrified glances on their way to and from school. That was it. There was no note in that envelope. There was nothing else but that. I knew nothing. I had never heard any of those stories about my house in those terms. What I did find in a little bit of research later was this article written from the North Collins newspaper of the day. And it said, died Eden, August 31st, 1884, Mrs. Mary Southwick, age 34 years. She was the oldest daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Rufus Stickney of Brant in Erie County. Her untimely death cast a gloom of sadness and sorrow, not only in her own immediate family, but also among her acquaintances and friends who will long miss the general cordial ways and her active, earnest friendship for those who knew her best, the loving woman, and who is now gone to a higher life. Once I got that letter, it was like a floodgate opened, and I started getting phone calls and letters, and people would stop me on the street. And one of the people who called me was a man named Ferris Randall, and he was the historian, the town historian. He also owned an insurance agency. And Ferris wanted to let me know that he had a great cousin, as in great, a couple generations removed, that used to own my house as his summer home. And he called, he said, did you know that? And I said, no, Ferris, I'd never heard that. And he said, yeah, his name was Edward Randall. He was a very prominent attorney in Buffalo, married to Maria. They had 3 children. And I'm listening to this conversation, taking it all in, feeling pretty good because it's not about a woman who committed suicide, right? And then he said, and did you know he had seances up there in that house? I'm like, no, Ferris, I didn't know that. He then continues to tell me that Edward Randall had seances. He became nationally known about spiritualism. He wrote 6 books on the topic, which were all, along with 500 letters of correspondence, all kept in a special collections library at the University of Michigan. Now, first person I hear about committed suicide, and the second person writes books about spiritualism that are in a special collections library in the University of Michigan. It seems a little far-fetched. So I start doing research, and I find out that it is exactly the truth. And Ferris was telling me everything I needed to know. Edward Randall, an attorney, he was a no-nonsense man. He was straight about the facts, ma'am, and take it to court and win the battles. When he was also an agnostic, which comes into this. He was hired by a group of Buffalo citizens to prove fraudulent a direct voice medium by the name of Emily French, who lived in Rochester. So he took the case, which was really interesting because, again, he was a no-nonsense man. He didn't believe in spiritualism. They believed that he enjoyed the challenge, the ideal of the challenge. So he takes this case, and not only can he not prove her fraudulent, he becomes her greatest disciple. They travel the country lecturing on spiritualism and become nationally known and eventually internationally known. Edward does, in fact, write 6 books. This was his most popular, that sold the most. The Dead Have Never Died. Really pretty, a direct title, right? The other books are called Life's Progression, The Future of Man, Frontiers of the Afterlife, Told in the Afterlife, and The Living Dead. He really wanted people to believe in Emily, and so he built a seance room in his house on West Ferry in the city of Buffalo, where he and Emily held over 700 seances to validate her abilities. He then also contacted a man named Isaac Funk from New York City, and they were from the Funk and Wagnalls Publishing Company. Some of you may be old enough to remember the Funk and Wagnalls encyclopedia and dictionaries. Isaac Funk was a minister, and he was also a researcher on spiritualism. So Edward Randall sent Funk a letter and said, will you please validate Emily French? Will you have her come to a seance and validate her? Because everyone listened to Funk. He was an expert. And Funk refused and refused and refused, and Edward Randall continued to ask him to do this. And so eventually Funk said yes, but he set terms. The first term was that Edward Randall could not come with her. The second term was that she had to be willing to do seances in any location he wanted in New York City. And the third term was she had to be willing to allow anyone into those seances that he chose. They must have really wanted this validation by Funk because they agreed to all the terms. And here's the thing about Emily French. When Edward met her, and this was some years before, Emily was in her 60s. She was pretty much deaf, and she had a heart condition that made it hard for her to breathe and speak boldly. And yet the spirit that she channeled most often was Red Jacket, who was a Seneca chief, a Seneca Nation warrior chief. And so Emily would come into a seance room. She would be feeble in coming in. She would sit down and be trying to catch her breath. And yet when she channeled, when she did a seance, it was the booming voice of this Native American warrior that came out of her mouth. And that's why people believed in her so much. So they agreed to these terms. Isaac Funk wrote about this experience, and here's what he said. Although feeble in health, Mrs. French was put through the ringers. She sat with me and for others for nights on end, 12 sessions in all, in a locked room, and she repeatedly summoned voices purportedly from the world beyond. And I could find no possible way that she could have produced the voices herself. And then he goes on to say that this is what Red Jacket said in the seance. We live as real lives, more real, on this side than when we did on Earth. In fact, everything here is so real that many who come over die, as you call it. But they do not know that for a long time. They do not realize they are dead. A great part of the work to be done here on this side is to instruct the dead in the true science of progress. And Isaac Funk documented all this in a book he wrote called The Psychic Riddle. So that's why Edward Randall believed in her, and that's why he spent a great deal of his life trying to validate Emily French. When Edward Randall died, he was a big article in the newspaper. This is his picture and his death notice. And it wasn't just a notice, it was a whole article. So he had played a big impact in Western New York, but also around the world because of his spiritualism and what he did. He also helped write a book called The French Revelation. And it says, the extraordinary eyewitness account of the psychic wonder of Rochester Emily S. French, the phenomenon, direct independent voice. Investigated and documented by the celebrated American attorney Edward C. Randall between 1890 and 1912. So I now know that I'm living in a house where a woman hung herself because she was so unhappy in the marriage she was in, and also in a house where a man did seances and was known around the world for doing those seances and working with a woman who could channel Red Jacket. And here's the fun part. She slept with a portrait of Red Jacket over her bed. I'm just saying. As I start to put this together, I start to think maybe there is a book here. Maybe there is something that people would be willing to read other than it's my house and it sounds got some cool stories. And I'm at my neighbor's house one day and I'm talking to her about this. And her husband stops and he asks me, "Are you talking about Edward Randall?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, my parents," he was living in the house that his parents lived in at the turn of the 20th century. And he said, "My parents' neighbor at the time in the early 1900s knew Edward Randall. They were friends. She told my parents that she met Sir Arthur Conan Doyle at Edward Randall's house in the summer and that she went to a seance there." Okay, we have now opened a huge can of worms to an internationally famous author who's doing seances at my house. Now I'm really starting to scratch my head and wonder if everybody's a little on the loony side about this house. So I go to the place where I feel like I find the best resources, and that's the Buffalo History Museum. And I go into the museum and find lots of information on Edward Randall, which was very helpful. And then I said to the historian, "Okay, now we need to look up Sir Arthur Conan Doyle." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I'm all proud. Well, he was at my house and he did seances with Edward Randall. And, everybody around the world knows Sir Arthur Conan Doyle for Sherlock Holmes." And she said, "If it's not written, it didn't happen." And I'm like, whoa. And that's when I realized I'm not a historian because I believed it. I didn't need to see it written. But she and I researched through the files. We did not find that Edward Randall in the files in Buffalo, that Edward Randall was friends with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle or that he'd been at my house. And here's a picture from those days of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle if you've never seen him. He was originally a physician. A little introverted, but loved to write. And people loved his writing and started with short stories. They encouraged him to write books. He ended up writing Sherlock Holmes. As time went on, though, Sherlock Holmes became more important to the world than he was, and it was too much for him. So he killed him. He killed him in a book. In the same time, around World War I, he lost his son and I believe his brother in the war, along with 12 other family members. Yes, his son and his brother. And it was devastating to him. And that's when he decided he needed to try to find out if he could contact them. And he became interested in spiritualism and devoted the rest of his life to it, really. He became an expert. He traveled the world lecturing on spiritualism. So we did not find that Edward in the Buffalo Museum, History Museum, we did not find that Edward Randall and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle were connected. However, we did find a news clipping that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had lectured in Buffalo twice. The first time was in 1886, I believe. And the second time was in 1922, exactly when I needed him to be there. And so in 1922, he came to Buffalo to lecture. He addressed, they say, a large cosmopolitan audience at the Tech Theater. And what he told the interviewer, he had a couple of newspaper interviews, that when he was done with his presentations, he was going to go directly to Lilydale because he'd heard about spiritual activity there and he wanted to find out more. So, while the historian could not connect Edward Randall and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, I took a map and I pinned Buffalo, New York, downtown Buffalo, and then I pinned Lilydale. And guess what was right in the middle? Crown Hill.
So I firmly believed that it was true, that they did connect. It made sense that they connected. And eventually I did go to the University of Michigan and go through Edward Randall's 500 letters of correspondence that are in a special collection there. And he and Conan Doyle did correspond. They did know each other. They did talk about spiritualism together. And so that was enough for me. That was enough for me to start writing this book. But it was all from the perspective of, wow, isn't this cool? Kind of creepy. A woman died. There's seances and everything else until this. Until the town historian for Eden was new. Ferris Randall retired, and a lady named Sue Minnekheim took over. And when she took over, she knew about this book. She was a good friend of mine. And she called me one day and she said, you need to come up to the office. I have something for you. And she gave me just a mimeograph paper. Again, hard to read. Not a lot of good writing there. Okay. But it is from an article that was in the Independent newspaper, which was the Buffalo News newspaper of the day. And it was from September 5th, 1884. It was on page 8, column 3. And I'm going to read it to you as best I can. About 3 o'clock Sunday afternoon, the community of North Collins was shocked with the rumor that Mrs. Mary Southwick, wife of Owen, had committed suicide by hanging herself. While the news cast a gloom on the entire village for a while, all sorts of rumors and rife went through, until evening, when a reliable source said that the suicide had happened, and that she had accomplished her design by means of a piece of clothesline fastened to a rafter in the woodshed. The taking of her own life seems to have been premeditated, as she had written 2 letters explaining her reason for her rash act and saying that she was tired of life. The family resided on a farm 4 miles from this village east. The deceased was highly esteemed by neighbors and friends, and the sudden taking of her life is deeply lamented by all who knew her. And when I read that, Mary became real to me. And instead of just wanting to write a book about a house and some ghosts and things that happen, it became more about giving this woman a voice, allowing her to have a place where people could know her and what happened to her in this house. And that's where Crown Hill and the book being the house being the narrator of the book came to be important to me. The biggest problem I had was that I had no idea how to write a seance. I had no idea how to write about ghosts or anything else. And so I got about halfway through the book and decided I was going to quit because I couldn't write it. I couldn't write it well enough that if you read it and I couldn't suspend your disbelief if you didn't believe in those things, if when you read this book you just thought, oh, this is silly, I've never read anything so silly, then there was no point in me writing it. So I went to visit my daughter one day. I went to her school where my grandkids went to school. She worked there, and there was going to be a play. So I went to see my grandkids. Stopped in my daughter's office. She said, "How's the book?" I said, "I'm not writing it." She said, "Why not?" I said, I don't know how to write a seance. I don't know how to write ghosts or spirits. I don't know any of that. And there's no point in writing it if people can't believe it. And she said, "You need to talk to Candi." Now, Candi was the hub of the school where my grandkids went to school. Her desk was in the middle of the hallway when you came in the door, and everything that happened in that school passed through Candi. It didn't matter if it was lunches, buses, excuses, parents coming in, kids going out. Candi was command central. And I looked at my daughter and I said, "Why would I talk to Candi?" And she said, "She's a medium." "Candi? At the desk in the hallway?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Is she any good?" She's like, "Mom, I don't know. Go talk to her." So I did go and meet Candi at the desk in school. I went out and said good morning, and she looked at me with her usual Candi nice smile. She has this lovely smile and almost an angelic sense about her. And I told her that I said, "Lisa just told me that you're a medium." And she looked at me and her look changed from that kind of the woman who was in charge of taking care of the center of the school to more of a spiritual look. which I don't know how else to explain it than that. And she said, she smiled and she said, yes, I am a medium. And I said, I'm looking for some help. I said, I'm trying to write a book about spiritualism and about a woman who lived in my house. And Candi looked at me and she put her hand out in front of me like that, right? And in my family, when somebody puts a hand out like to you like that, you stop whatever you're doing and you just stop and listen. So I did. I stopped and I listened. And Candi said, I'm happy to help you with whatever you need, but I don't want you to tell me anything else about it. I said, okay, great. So we agreed that Candi would come to my house, and whatever it was I was asking her to do, she would deal with it that night when she came. So she came into the house, and my intent was to take her into the dining room and take her into the heart of the house. The dining room is the very center of the house. And as we started into the dining room, she stopped me. We were in the kitchen, and she said, what's that door? And she pointed over to the door to the back stairs to the house, to the upstairs. And I said, well, that's the back stairway. And she said, can we go up there first? I was like, hey, this is your party, girl. I have no idea. And she didn't know anything, really no reason of why she was there, other than I was trying to write a book about the house. So now I'm going to turn back to Candi, and she's going to share what she remembers of that night.
I do actually remember when you came up to me at the school, and we didn't really know each other at all.
Nope.
I knew you as Grandma coming in to visit. And so when you came up to me, I mean, it happens to me a lot when people find out, what I do. Not everybody knows what I do until they're supposed to. So when they're supposed to, they come up to me like you did. And when I came to the house, I remember when I first come in, usually I immediately start to do some sort of clearing of negative energy. Now, this was a little bit different because I was actually there to read whatever was in your house. And as I'm working, I don't allow negative energy around me. I kind of put up this bubble of protection. And anybody who's familiar with that sort of thing, it can be very handy. I do recommend it. But I came into the house, and I was just sort of drawn to that stairway. I can't even tell you why. I wasn't even hearing spirit yet. I was just kind of going with my sixth sense, as a lot of us do all the time. So as we headed upstairs, I felt drawn to various places in the house. And I remember most clearly going into the bedroom. Do you remember that, Christina? We
Yes.
went into the bedroom. And then I think I was drawn, was it the closet first?
My bedroom at the time was a combination of 3 rooms, really 2.5 rooms, that we had taken to make a master bedroom. One of those rooms had been a small bedroom that we turned into a walk-in closet. Now, I have to take a little segue here because the Crow family, who owned the house in 1979 when my first husband and I looked at it, their kids came back and had 2 reunions at Crown Hill while I lived there. We made a connection and they came back. And in one of those reunions, they came and told me that the bedroom, the small bedroom that I'd taken for a walk-in closet, had belonged to their aunt and that she died there. Okay, now Candi, again, never been to the house. We didn't really know each other. She didn't know anything about it. Candi, do you remember your reaction to that bedroom, that closet, when you walked into the closet?
I do remember that it was very heavy. It was a very heavy feeling, and I was very uncomfortable. And there's this feeling that comes over me when there's energy that I shouldn't be around, and it's kind of like sticking your finger in a socket. Okay, it's not as intense, but it's there, and you just kind of feel that. And I said I don't want to be in here, but something happened in here. I remember that. Now, when I do readings, I don't remember what I say to people, so a lot of this is from us talking about it over the years. A lot of it came back to me. But I do remember that specifically about that room. And then I needed to leave that room. I needed to get out of it. And I had no idea what had happened there other than someone had died. I knew someone had died there. And at that point, I was almost afraid to talk to them in that room.
What I remember from that night was, Candi, you walked into the closet, you like whipped around. It was like a 180 on your heels, whipped around and came out, and you said, wow, something bad feels really bad in there. I do not want to be in there. I'm not going back in there. And I knew you didn't know anything about it, but I knew that someone had died in that closet or in that bedroom at the time. And so that was impressive to me, that you knew that you could feel that. But for me, I wanted to bring you back into the bedroom because my bed was over in a corner. The room was really big, and we made a kind of a little cove where the bed went. So I started moving that way, right? And I look, and you're not with me anymore. And I kind of stop and turn around and look back, and you're like frozen in a spot. And I turn around and come back to you, and you're standing there, and you're crying. And it's not that ugly, bad, ugly face crying that we do, but you were just standing there, and it was like a waterfall, just streaming from your eyes down your cheeks. And again, we didn't really know each other, and I wasn't sure what was going on. And I just looked at you, and I remember clearly saying, "Are you okay?" And you just stood there. And you never looked at me. You never took your eyes off the end of the bedroom where my bed was by the windows. And you just said, "She's still here." And I was like, "Who's still here?" And you said, "The woman you want to know about is still here. And she wants you to know that she's so glad that you are here, because she knows that you have had a life much like her own, and that you can help her." Now, what I heard, I was like freaked. Like, what are you talking about? And what I think what's really important is to tell people now is what it is that you hear or don't hear or know or don't know when you say something like that, Candi, because I figured you knew exactly what you were saying, and you didn't. But why?
No, I was just meeting Mary for the very first time. Her presence was very strong there. And it was like a cry. Her presence was a cry for help. And she was very excited that you were there. And she knew that in some way you could help her. And she wanted to be helped. She was stuck. Her soul was just unhappy. And that's what immediately comes through with spirit is when they are close to me, I feel what they're feeling. So that's why the tears just started coming, because that was from her. That was how she was feeling. And that's my first connection, is feeling what they feel. So I do remember that she needed to connect with you. I do remember that that connection took a while to fully form. And I do remember that night feeling her hold my hand. Because when I remember when I was frozen there, I knew that I just couldn't move for a while. It was because she was so close to me, and I felt her holding my hand. And she just needed that connection. She needed that just for someone to know that she was there, for someone to know that she was stuck. And I do know that she was tormented when she was there, and I felt that pain. And I was just so happy to be able to connect the two of you. So, because there were so many things about the two of you that were similar, yet you're very different people. But she was drawn to you, and she was thrilled that you were there. And the fact that you were able to connect with her and bring her to life in this book was, the whole process was freeing for her, for someone to know her story. And I do know now that since then, Mary has been freed. And she's
Well,
able to come and go. And I was so happy to be able to help with that.
so the other thing that you told me in that same time frame that night, as you stood there, and again, never once looked at me. We never had conversation face to face. Your conversation was completely with whatever you were seeing and connecting with in that room, because you never looked away from the room itself. And so as you tell me about Mary and you get to that point, the next thing you tell me is that there's a spirit guide in the room, that I have a spirit guide in this house. And when you did it, you raised your hand up here. You have a spirit guide. Now, you raised your hand up high, and for me, that indicates a man, tall, big, right? And now I'm slightly nervous at this point. I don't know what the hell you're talking about, and it's freaking me out. And you say, and you have a spirit guide here, and I'm thinking it's a man, and I'm like, does he see a man in my life? And you just get this grin on your face, and again, you never look at me, and you say, he wants you to know, and you used your hands like this, right? You can have the man, or you can have the book. And I looked at you and I said, I want the book. And you said, done. And I still don't have a man in my life, Candi. And that's like, how many years ago? Like, I didn't know it was a life decision. I thought it was a momentary choice.
Well, Christina, you're a talented writer.
So anyway, you also talked about my mother's spirit being there. I mean, you told me a lot of things about that house. And then what I do want to talk about is you went downstairs. And for all of you that can see Missy, there's a door behind her. There's a lamp and then there's a door. And when Candi came down the stairs and got to that door, she stopped. Now that door now goes out into a porch. But there, when the house was in the 1880s, when Mary was there, that was a back door to the house and it went to the outside. And Candi, as I'm, again, leading her through the house, and she made her own stops and starts wherever she felt it was important. And she stopped at that door you can see behind Missy. And she said, this wasn't like this. Now, again, never been to the house. And I said, yes, that's correct. It was not like that. And she said, this was an outside door. Yes, that's correct. And she said, this was a place where Mary was in pain. This was a place where her husband would abuse her in the morning before he left the house. And I see her on the lawn, laying on the grass here and crying and being so hurt by him. And again, she didn't use the names of Mary and Owen, but she talked about the woman and the man. So it was a pretty stunning experience because, again, Candi, you'd never been to the house. We didn't know each other, and you certainly didn't know about Mary and Owen Southwick. So from there, I'm just going to fast forward because we are running way late, but hopefully everybody will hang in. So we put the book together and it started to make sense, and I wrote it and we got it all together, and I got to the very last chapter and didn't know how the book was going to end. I had no idea. You've all heard it now, but I kept putting the chapter off. I didn't know. I didn't know if I wanted to write it. I didn't know how to write it. I didn't know how the story ended. Was Mary going to pass? Did Meg have something to do with it? I brought them all to this point, and then what do I do? So I didn't write it for a while, and I had set February 14th as the deadline. It had to be done. And this was the Sunday before, which was about the 9th or 10th of February. So I made up my mind. I got up that Sunday morning. I'm like, all right, you got to finish this book. And one of the things Candi did tell me when we were up in that bedroom, I said, well, if Mary's so glad that I'm here, again, being a little nervous and irreverent, if she's so glad I'm here, she needs to help me write this book because I got to make some money to be able to stay in this house. And Candi said, if you open your mind to her, she will help you. And so that day, that Sunday morning, I got up and I brought my laptop to the bed, to the area where Candi saw Mary, and I sat down on the bed and I opened my mind and I said, okay, Mary, let's go. What's this book going to be? And it started to be the chapter that I read to you on the final night of the book itself, where Clara comes and Brady and Meg are there. But Clara started taking over the whole project. Clara was dealing with Owen and was going to make him go away. And I stopped writing. And I remember looking up and saying, okay, I don't know where you're going with this, but Meg has to be the one to make this happen. It can't be Clara. It can't be. So I'll write whatever you want, but know that that's where it has to go. And so I went back to the computer and I started again. And the book kept going. Clara was standing up with that necklace and she was giving Owen what for. And then all of a sudden, Meg stood up and she took it over. And she ended up being the strong, independent woman that everyone needed. And then in the end, a shock to me was that who helped her was Rose, who was her grandmother. So all that was a complete shock to me. But I got it done and sent it off, found an editor, got all that done. And the book was with the editor to go for the final editings, to come back to me to do the final rewrite. And I thought, whew, got it done, gonna take a break. We are now in August of 2014, and I invite Candi for dinner because I have to tell her a story of something that has happened to me at Crown Hill in the time between I finished the book and this dinner with Candi. So she comes, we have dinner, we're on the porch, we're having dessert. And I said, Candi, there's something I have to tell you. Something has happened here to me. And she said, what? So I said, I wanted to fold my laundry. I hate doing laundry and I had to fold laundry. So I brought all the laundry into my bedroom and set it on the floor. And I thought I would turn on the television and watch TV while I folded my laundry. And while I did that, my television was in a big armoire in my bedroom. And the armoire had double doors, so you had to pull open both doors. And this television had belonged to my mother. So it was an old-fashioned television. It weighed about 50 pounds. It was about 3 feet deep and 3 feet wide and was impossible to move. And it was set in this armoire. So I opened up the double doors on the armoire and I turned on the television and I turned around to go back to fold my laundry. And all of a sudden, for the first time in my entire life in that house, I was afraid. But I didn't know why. I was scared out of my wits. And I can remember screaming and jumping forward. And as I did, feeling something come down the back of my body. And I stopped and I turned around and I looked and there was the television on the floor, still connected, still plugged in, and still I could hear a program still going on. And then there was the shelf that the television had been on to the side on the floor, whole and fine. And I had absolutely no idea how it happened. It couldn't have fallen out. It was 50 pounds. It was 3 feet deep. There was absolutely no sense of why it happened. So I had two choices. I could stand there and try to investigate everything and figure out what was happening and probably be scared of the house and be afraid of staying there, which I didn't want. Or I could put the shelf back in, put the TV back in, turn it off, close the doors, and pretend like it never happened. And that's what I did. And for the next 2 weeks, I wasn't sure if I was sane. I wasn't sure if I could tell someone. I was afraid to tell anybody. If I told my kids, I was afraid they'd lock me up. So I invited Candi to dinner so I could tell her. Now, Candi, do you remember this night on the porch?
Was that the night when we were there with a few other?
Yes, that was the night I invited my neighbor and her daughter. And do you remember me telling you this story that I just told?
Yes.
And do you remember what you said to me? Your first reaction?
Did I tell you right away that it was Owen?
Your immediate first word was, oh, he is so mad.
Yes.
He is, actually, your exact words were, he is so pissed off.
Yes.
And I just looked at you and I'm like, who's pissed off? And you said?
Owen.
Owen.
Did I use his name at that
Yes,
point?
absolutely.
Yeah.
You said
I
Owen.
knew he was the man of the house. That was for sure. And he thought he was still the man of the house.
And when I said, why is Owen mad? That's when you said to me, because Mary's gone. Right? And I'm like, what do you mean Mary's gone? I'm not done writing this book. She can't be gone yet. I need her help. And you were like, no, she can still come and go, but she's freed, which is exactly what you just explained. And I said, how can she be freed? And you were like, because you believed in her and because you told her story. So I was so grateful. But then I came back to you and said, what about this big spirit guide who's supposed to be protecting me? Do you remember that? And you just said he's so sorry, but they never expected Owen to return. And he came in when they did not expect him, but they promised me he would never return again. And he never did.
I'll just say I definitely feel Mary's love come and go at various times, and her presence. There's just moments where I'm like, yeah, she's around.
Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you that when I finished the book and when I moved from the house, I was devastated at the thought of losing Mary. Because what became really apparent to me, people around the country have read this book. I've done presentations in Portland, Oregon, and out in Winter Garden, Florida, and St. Augustine. People around the country know about Mary. They know about what a special woman she was, that her community cared about her, that her neighbors were devastated when she killed herself. And that's given voice to her and life to her. And I felt really badly when I left the house because I was afraid that I would lose that connection. But Candi, you were very clear to me that that's not what happens.
Right. Yeah, it's you two have a very strong connection, and she has a very strong connection to the house. And that's one of the beautiful things about being freed. When you are freed from your body, you do not have to stay on this earth plane. You just have to know that.
Well, I think we've pretty much covered the story through stops and starts, and I appreciate everyone who's hung in with us. But Candi, why don't we try? Diane's with us. So Diane, if you'll hang on, Candi, if you can call her and do that reading, Candi's going to read now live. So Candi's calling her. Yes, you have the number?
Yep.
Okay.
It's ringing. Diane? Yeah. Hi, it's Candi. Hi. Diane, can you hear me clearly? Yes, I can. Okay. Have you ever had a reading before? Yes, I have. Oh, excellent. Good. Okay. I do love newbies, but seasoned people are good too. So Diane, the way I work is what I do is I tune in to your voice. Okay. Okay. So give me just a second. What I'm going to do is have you say your first name for me. Diane. You hear me? Yep, I can hear you. Hold on just one sec. Okay. Okay, Diane. I get a lot of symbolism, and a lot of it is meant for you specifically, obviously, because we don't want everybody in the world knowing exactly what's going on in your life, but all of this should make sense to you. I do recommend taking notes, okay? If you have a piece of paper nearby where you can write some things down. All right, excellent. So Diane, the first thing I get for you actually is it's a flickering candle, and it's not very tall. All right, it's burned down a little bit. I feel as though this candle is symbolic of you, and it's burned down to about 25%. Okay, and that is exactly what it sounds like. Okay, you're burned down. You got a lot of stuff going on, and it's been. I feel as though life has been very taxing and very trying, and there's no break. Okay, that's what they're telling me, is there's just no break in what's going on, and the candle just keeps burning, and it's burning a little bit lower and a little bit lower all the time. All right. Thank you. I have a male spirit guide here for you. Okay. He's holding out his right hand and he's holding out his left hand. And what he is explaining is that you have a lot of things going on, all right? But there's two major things that are weighing very heavy on you, and you're holding both of them, all right? Trying to hold both of them up, and it's very taxing. He says, in your right hand, you're holding a lot of responsibility. You're holding a lot of family and friends and things that you're feeling responsible for, and they're dragging you down. You're giving them all of your energy, which is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing that you're giving to them, but it's all of your energy. Okay. And in the left hand, you have some more responsibilities. You have some other things that you need to take care of, but you're trying desperately to add in the things that you need in your life. Okay. The things that you need to give you vibrancy, the things that you need to give you life. And you're trying to squeeze out of that joy and love and all the things you need to keep you going. And you're going to need to balance, right? You're trying to balance. That's why you have one in your left hand and one in your right hand, and you're trying to balance both of these things desperately. Your male spirit guide is telling me that number one, okay, can you see me? Can you see my video? Yeah. Okay. So what your spirit... I wasn't looking at you, but I will now. Okay. What your spirit guide is telling me is that you're trying too hard. Okay? It's just a little bit too hard. You have to take a breath. You have to take a step back. And you need to concentrate on what you're holding in that left hand. All right? The right hand is much heavier. The right hand, it seems as though it takes more to hold it, okay? But the left hand, all right, this is your needs as well. This is what you need to fill. You have to take care of yourself. You have to give life and breath to yourself, or you will have nothing to give what's in your right hand, okay? Hold on one second. Thank you. Now he's showing me what looks like you're wading through your life's path. Ooh, okay. Your life's path right now, you have a lot going on. A lot going on, and there's like this water that you're wading through. Now, normally when I see a life's path, often it's a path of some sort, you know, with different things going on. This is you're literally wading in water, okay? So you're stuck. Your feet aren't moving as fast as you would like them to. And they're saying this time right now that we're going through of quarantine, it's like you're even heavier and your feet are even more stuck. Thank you. They're saying you're going through this for a reason. Okay? There are things that you need to learn from this time by going inward. There are things that you need to learn from being stuck in one place for a while because you're not seeing everything you need to see. You need to look around. Can you be more specific here? Hold on one second. Okay. Thank you. Your male spirit guide is telling me that you have a lot of people that obviously your right hand, your left hand, all of these people that you're trying to touch in with, you're trying to take care of, you're trying to offer some words, some comfort, some time, whatever it is that they need. But they're saying you need to go inward and you need to spend some time just for yourself. You haven't even done that yet. You haven't even done that. Just stop and take a breath. And if you're willing or able to meditate, they're highly recommending it. You need to go inward. And then you're going to find answers and they're going to come to you and things are going to be easier. Okay? Thank you. This water that you're in, they're saying you can wade out of it. Okay? You can just come right out of it. But it's going to take... You need to decide pointedly that you're doing that, okay? That you're going to do the things you need to do for yourself. Thank you. I'm feeling a lot of stress, you know, some of this going on once in a while where you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to handle this? What am I going to do with that? Okay. They're saying, stop. You just need to breathe and take care of yourself. This is your huge message, okay? This is what you really need to think about and delve deep into the idea of letting everything go and taking care of yourself. It's so important, okay? Hold on one second. Thank you. Oh my gosh, just a whirlwind. And they're also telling me you have a different people around you with different opinions, and they're all trying to push their opinion on you at the same time. Some people are like, oh, we need to be doing this and we need to be doing that, and then there's people with the opposite opinion. You need to step back and not even be around that. You don't need to listen to that. You don't need to be involved in that. You need to take this time to boost up yourself, to breathe, to go inward. This is a huge message for you. And I know it seems so simple, but it's difficult. It's difficult to let go and say, it's okay. I can let the rest of the world spin around me while I sit here in silence and enjoy that silence. Okay? Okay. Diane, I would love to talk with you again when we have more time.
That would be great.
I do have another call I need to make. You have my phone number now.
Yes.
And I would love to get feedback from you as well. So go ahead and write on I have a Facebook wall, Candi Spirit Medium. I also have Candi Donaldson, Thornton, either one. I check both of them. People find me on both. Feel free to write me a message, private or live, whatever you'd like. And I hope we get to talk again.
Okay, we will.
All right. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Good luck. So nice to chat with you.
Okay.
All right.
You
Bye-bye.
so much.
Hello, Corey.
Hi.
It's Candi. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Excellent. I'm so glad we got a hold of you. Sorry we're running a little bit late as things tend to happen that way. Can you
That's okay.
Awesome. Corey, have you had a reading before?
Lots of them. I was very young. I kind of grew up with a grandmother that was very metaphysical.
Just say your first name for me so I can tune into you.
My name is Corey.
There we go. Oh my goodness, Corey. Female spirit guide, very strong with you.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, you have a very strong female line in your family. Very powerful women. Very powerful women. A whole line of them. Do you... Hold on one second.
Sure.
Okay. Do you realize that you can hear spirit? You can feel spirit?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you're very in tune, but you just question. You question a lot.
All the time.
Is this me or is this them? You think quite often that it's just you.
Yeah, I think I take way too much responsibility for things that aren't mine. So yeah. I've actually never been at a place since I was in my 20s where I was questioning so much. I've because of the events of the last 3 or 4 years, I've come to question an awful lot, and so that's why this reading is so important. Is I really need to clear that line.
Yeah, they're showing me there's been a lot of turmoil, a lot of up and down. I'm getting this up and down, all over the place. And not just emotionally, but physically, both. Just up and down, and with different people in and out of your life, the people that have left your life, people that have come in and then left again. And I have all this in and out, up and down, all over the place. What do we do? Okay. Your female spirit guide is pretty awesome. She is literally showing me, this is the visual I'm getting, okay? She's taking a piece of chalk and drawing a big circle around you. Okay? A big circle around you. And she says, everything in here is all that you need. That is all that you need. And there's a big lesson that you were put on this earth to learn and to share with others. Okay? And I know that's a lot to take in and it's a lot to swallow, but that is all you need.
But what's in that circle? I mean, because it makes sense, because I've wondered, why so much has been taken from me in the last 3 years. Everything.
Mm-hmm.
Literally.
Mm-hmm. Everything.
My health, my son, my health, I will do it. I'm sitting here like in this state of limbo going, okay, what?
So your spirit guide, again, she's pointing to this circle and she's drawing around it again and again. Okay. She's telling me that the first thing you need to do is you need to put up a bubble every day. Okay. I don't know if you've heard me or anybody else talk about this bubble of protection that you need to put around yourself. All right. There's been a lot of negative energy in and out of your life. Negative energy. Now, energy can be in the form of entities. It can be in the form. It can come in a mirror that you bought at a garage sale. Okay. There has been a lot of negative energy in and out of your life, and it's like it's come in, and you've tried to get rid of it, and it's come back. Okay. So what I want you to do, all right, your female spirit guide is telling me that you need to be putting up this bubble every day of positive energy that is around you. So in the morning when you get up, you're going to imagine this egg-shaped crystalline bubble around your entire body, and white light coming straight down to you from above and filling that egg. Okay. Filling it with white positive energy. And you are going to say, I only allow the highest and the best. Okay. Only positive energy is allowed near me. All negative energy must stay out. You need to put it around you, around your house, around your car, around your place of employment, around everywhere that you work. I feel as though there's been some negative energies attached to you, and I'm asking your spirit guides to help get them away from you. Okay?
Thank
you. Okay. Your spirit guide is returning to this, and I don't want this to scare you. Okay. I don't want this to scare you at all. What you need to do is you need to be strong, and you need to say, listen, I'm the one in charge here. This is me. This is my life, and I am in charge of it. No negative energy is allowed near me at all, ever, period. Okay? So I'm going to have them work with you. I'm going to, awareness is half of it, okay? You need to concentrate on you being positive, enjoying every single aspect of the good in your life, all right? You need to put the energy into the sunshine glistening off the leaves. You need to put your energy into the beauty of the rainfall that you see. If there's bad weather, see the beauty in it, okay? If there's something coming at you that's not sounding good, you need to see the good in it. You need to find the good in it. You're stuck in this spiral, okay? That's pulling you down, and you keep wanting to come back up again. So that we're getting this push, this pull, this up, down, okay? Yeah. Your guides are telling me that this negative energy can be removed, all right? But you have to help them. You have to work with them. And you have to be strong. You have to allow your soul to be strong and be filled with the positive energy that you're asking from above, okay? So this white light is going to come down. It's going to fill this egg every single morning. And you can do it again at night. Do it again at night. Fill it with this positive energy. And this is fantastic advice for any person living in a physical body on this planet, okay? Really, bottom line, this is fantastic for everyone. If you have any sort of negative energy in and around your life, you do this every single morning and your guides will have your back. They will have you covered. Know that they are there and they will be there to protect you from any negative energy. I know what that feels like, and it is not fun. You need to start with the protection. You need to start with the positivity. There will be room for more in your life once you get the negativity out. Okay? I'm sorry, our time is getting cut right now. I would love to chat with you more. you have my number, so we can set something up and, you know what I mean, talk for a little bit. I would be more than happy to chat with you for longer so we can get everything all settled for you. But it was so nice to talk to you tonight, and send me a message on Facebook or just text me at this number and we'll reconnect. Okay?
Thanks a lot. This was really helpful.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. I hope it's helpful, and I hope I talk to you soon.
Thank you, Candi.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we're a little late, but I think we managed to get it done. For everyone who tuned in tonight, and for those of you who came back 5 times, we're so sorry. We did our best. Hopefully you got to see a little bit of the farm, you got to hear the story behind the story, and meet Candi. And Candi, if anybody does want to contact you, how does that happen again?
You can just message me on Facebook, Candi Donaldson Thornton or Candi Spirit Medium, either account.
And Missy, if anybody wants to talk to you about the vegetables and the flowers and the produce that you're growing and the eggs at the farm, how do they find you?
They can also find me on Facebook at Crown Hill Farm, or on Instagram, Crown Hill Farm NY, or on the internet at crownhillfarm.com.
Well, you are
If
just...
you Google Crown Hill Farm, you'll find me.
You are a powerhouse. Okay, so thank you, everybody. This is the end of our Crown Hill journey that started on April 1st, and it's been an honor and a privilege, and most of all, it's been validating for Mary, in my opinion, in my heart, and for the house itself, for Crown Hill. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for hanging in. Thank you for understanding that we're just humans trying to share the message, and we did the best we could tonight, and hopefully it was something that you enjoyed.
Christina, before you hang up, there was a comment, you might not have seen it. I don't know if we want to just take one.
Yeah, sure, I'd love to.
Asked how I came to Crown Hill, because we never...
Oh, we never
actually
did
talked
tell
about
that.
that.
Yeah.
I'd be happy.
So let me
How
just...
can we say the abridged?
Yeah, let me
version?
just set the stage for that. Okay, so I put Crown Hill for sale in May of 2016, and it sold in a day. It sold in an absolute day. It was unbelievable. And the people who bought it were a young couple with young children, and it always owned kind of more modern houses. And they bought the house, and then when they did the inspection and walkthrough of at that point it was a 160-year-old house, it blew their minds, and they just couldn't imagine managing it with their children and everything else. So they pulled out of the deal. And the next day, my realtor called me and said, I got this email from this guy in Colorado who said he's really interested in the farm, and he's going to come and see it. And the two of us just went, yeah, right. This guy then emailed my realtor. That was May. He emailed in June, in July. In August, he emailed again and said, really, this time I'm really coming. Don't sell this farm. I'm going to buy it. And so finally, he did come to Buffalo, and he walked in the house, but he wasn't alone. He was with Missy. And so, Missy, you can take it from there.
Yes, that guy was Jace, who's now my ex-husband, and we were living in Colorado and knew that we wanted land and property and a farm where we could grow food. We had a long, very specific list of criteria, and we would sit on our porch in Colorado and look through the internet every day, having our breakfast on the weekends, and text each other listings, and Crown Hill popped up, and we're like, wow, this place is magical. I mean, if you've seen pictures of the farm, or if you go to social media and see pictures of the farm, it is just magical, and it fit pretty much all the criteria: the size of property and the house and the locale and the climate and everything. And we were like, maybe we gotta go see it. And we're like, oh no, why are we gonna live there? You know, Buffalo, who wants to be in Buffalo? And
Hey.
I love it here now. And we kept looking and started to realize that we were comparing every other listing we looked at to this house. And so it was like, all right, we gotta go check it out. And I have to tell you that I was so afraid and unsure of coming here. And we booked flights, and then I freaked out and was like, I don't know, what are we doing? I love Colorado. Why would we leave and live in this place? And we canceled the flight to fly out. And then like, okay, let's go look at it. And we booked it and we came out, and I don't know if you recall, Christina, but we came twice and we spent a lot of time, both visits in the same weekend.
Yeah.
And walked through every room, walked the whole property. And it's interesting because the book has really opened my heart to paying attention to the spirit of the house. But at that time, I was much more aware of the spirit of the land, and being a farmer, that's definitely, and grower, that's definitely where my leanings are towards, the spirit of the land. And so we walked the whole land and the whole property into the woods and up the road and all around. And our last day out here, we were standing on top of the city hall in Buffalo, and decided to call in the offer and send it to you before we drove back to Erie to fly out, because that's where we flew from. And so here we are, and we negotiated all the details with you while we were on a trip to Amsterdam. So we were going back and forth with you overseas, and packed up. And the whole time I'm like, this is crazy, what are we doing? And we still came out here. And having a farm, I never grew a thing before being here.
You came from Brooklyn or the Bronx.
I'm in New Jersey, and I grew up, like, my backyard was a golf course, and maybe we had a couple of cactuses in the front window as plants, but, like, I never had house plants. I killed them. I hardly ever grew anything. I never had animals. I never handled farm animals besides a pet cat. And this was really his dream more than mine, and I'm still here on my own, and it's become my dream. I see 5, 10, 15, 20 years forward in this place very easily now, and it's my heart, it's my soul, it's my love, it's my passion, and I really want this place to be a place that anyone can come and feel nourished, not just with food and body, but nourished in heart, nourished in spirit, nourished in mind. Then that, I really feel like I'm growing community, as well as soil, as well as food here in this place. And it's become, And even once we were here, I had days where I just crying to him, being like, why are we here? We didn't know a soul here. I don't know anybody. I don't have a social life. And now this rich community of people, especially in these challenging times, who show up and help me do this and feed lots of you. And it's been really incredible.
So here's for all of you who, know the twist to every Crown Hill story. So Missy and Jace and I make the deal, and we, of course, like everybody, become Facebook friends. Why wouldn't you? And I was writing to a friend of mine who was in Colorado, and her name is Diane Huentes. And Missy and Jace saw the post that I wrote to Diane. And they came back to me and said, we know a Huentes here out in Colorado. Is she related? Could she be related to your friend with the same last name? I said, I don't know. I'll ask her. So I wrote to her and I said, I have the people I've just sold the house to know someone with your last name. Are you related to her? And she said, that's my stepdaughter. I've raised her since she was 14. Okay, that's interesting in and of itself. Diane Huentes, who I wrote to and who responded, and whose stepdaughter was already friends with Jace and Missy, is the granddaughter of the Crows, who owned the house from 1949 to 1979 and were the people I met with the 10 kids when I first saw the house in 1979. The point being, I firmly believe that house has a plan, and the house makes things happen when it thinks it's appropriate and according. So that was kind of the end of that cycle of my life at Crown Hill, was selling it to someone who was already connected to people who had lived there before. So I think that's a good place to end this story tonight. So thank you, Missy, for your part in joining us tonight and sharing your part of the Crown Hill journey. Candi, thank you as always for sharing your wisdom and your spirit and your ability. You're a remarkable woman, and we're blessed with your friendship. Thank you. And for everyone who watched tonight, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
And wherever you go on the journey, I hope that it's a good one for you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.